बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। वेलकम टू द कोर्स ऑफ इश्यूज इन पाकिस्तान इकोनॉमी मॉड्यूल 1। आज हम मॉड्यूल 1 स्टार्ट करने जा रहे हैं गाइस। मॉड्यूल 1 इज बेसिकली स्ट्रक्चरल ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन। पाकिस्तान इकोनॉमी इज नाउ 25th largest economy of the world in terms of purchasing power parity. It is 42nd largest economy of the world in terms of nominal GDP. We are now having very reasonable industrial base in the economy. We are now having very reasonable level of economic infrastructure in the economy. But situation was very different at the time of independence. In 1947, when Pakistan got independence, we were although blessed with immense reservoirs of land resources, mineral resources, but we were lack of financial resources. We were having very negligible industrial base in the economy. We were lack of economic infrastructure in the economy, and the major problem was rehabilitation and settlement of millions of refugees or migrants from subcontinent towards the newly established economy. So at the time of independence, Pakistan economy or Pakistan's per capita income was $100 only, and now it is around $1,600. So this one indicator shows positive sign that Pakistan economy has continuous growth and development history. But if we compare economic performance of the country over the time period, that remains very volatile. This slide indicates that sometime Pakistan economy or economic growth shows very remarkable trend, and the other point of time it becomes very disappointing. So that might be the reasons that if we compare Pakistan economy with the other economies of the region which got independence around the same time period, we'll be disappointed. Like per capita income Pakistan is now still less than the per capita income of the other countries of the region like Malaysia, like China, like India or even Bangladesh. उन countries की income इस पाकिस्तान से per capita income ज़्यादा है और जो कि पाकिस्तान के साथ ही आज़ाद हुए थे. So South Korea is much cited example. So what do you think guys? Why do we quote example of South Korea? Because South Korea and Pakistan were at the same developmental phase in 1960s time period, and now South Korea's per capita income is 18 times higher than Pakistan's per capita income. So this change indicates, or this sign indicates that there must be some serious issues in Pakistan economy which needs to be discussed in detail. और स्ट्रक्चरल ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन को डिस्कस करने के लिए, इकोनॉमिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को डिस्कस करने के लिए या इकोनॉमिक स्ट्रक्चर ऑफ द इकोनॉमी को बिल्ड करने के लिए बहुत जरूरी है कि हम इकोनॉमिक हिस्ट्री को डिस्कस करें. सो पाकिस्तान की इकोनॉमिक हिस्ट्री 70 ईयर्स की कहानी पे मबनी है और 7 डिफरेंट एराज हैं जो कि डिफरेंट ट्रेंड्स शो कर रहे हैं ग्रोथ और डेवलपमेंट के. सो इकोनॉमिक हिस्ट्री ऑफ Pakistan has been divided into 7 different decades, and that is the outline of our first module. First of all, we'll be discussing laying the foundation phase 1947 से 1958 तक, then 1958 से 1968 तक टाइम पीरियड that is said to be as developmental decade. So इसको development decade क्यों कहते हैं guys? सारे इकोनॉमिक्स के स्टूडेंट्स जानते हैं कि 1960s के टाइम पीरियड को हमारी इकोनॉमिक हिस्ट्री में हमेशा से गोल्डन टाइम पीरियड के नाम से जाना जाता है, क्योंकि उस वक्त पाकिस्तान की इकोनॉमी अमंग द अदर डेवलपिंग इकोनॉमीज ऑफ वर्ल्ड शाइन कर रही थी और बाहर पाकिस्तान की इकोनॉमी इकोनॉमिक मॉडल को एज अ रोल मॉडल डिस्कस किया जाता था. देन कम्स थर्ड एरा दैट इज 1970s till 1977 बैड लक ईयर्स बिकॉज ऑल ऑफ यू नो दैट 1971 में वी लॉस्ट ईस्ट पाकिस्तान, दैट वाज अ मेजर लॉस. सो बैड लक ईयर्स को डिस्कस करेंगे. देन वी डिस्कसिंग सेकंड मिलिट्री रिजीम 1977 till 1988, देन स्ट्रक्चरल एडजस्टमेंट एरा 1988 till 1999, देन न्यू मिलिट्री रिजीम 1999 से 2007 और 8 तक, देन करंट ऑनगोइंग डेमोक्रेटिक ट्रांजिशन 2007 ऑनवर्ड्स जो अभी भी चल रहा है. सो ये 70 ईयर्स जो हैं हमने आउटलाइन में इनको 7 डिफरेंट एराज में डिवाइड किया है और हम वन बाय वन दोज एराज विल बी डिस्कसिंग टू see that how our economy was performing in different time period. This is second video of first module, structural transformation. First video में हमने ये डिस्कस किया कि हमारा मॉड्यूल 1 जो है वो structural transformation of the economy पाकिस्तान इकोनॉमी के ऊपर बेस्ड है और ये कि हमारा फर्स्ट मॉड्यूल का आउटलाइन क्या होगा. we'll be discussing 70 years of Pakistan economic history. So moving towards the 7 decades of Pakistan economic history. Structural transformation का मतलब क्या है? So what do we mean by the word structural transformation? Structural transformation means the reallocation of economic activity among 3 broader sectors of a developing economy, and those sectors are agriculture, manufacturing and services. It is also a developmental theory which explains that how a subsistence economy or agricultural economy has been transformed or diversified towards more diversified production structure which is based over manufacturing and servicing setup. So basically इस first module में हम discuss करेंगे that how Pakistan's economy, which was basically and predominantly an agrarian economy, our major contributing sector was agriculture towards the GDP or national income of the economy, have become now a more diversified production structure with having other sectors major contributor towards the national income of the economy. So what would be the agenda of module 1? हमारा एजेंडा ये है कि हम पाकिस्तान की इकोनॉमिक परफॉर्मेंस को इवेल्युएट करेंगे जो कि स्प्रेडेड है 70 ईयर्स ऑफ पाकिस्तानी हिस्ट्री, इकोनॉमिक हिस्ट्री के ऊपर या 7 डिकेड्स के ऊपर. विल बी डिस्कसिंग, विल हैव अ ब्रीफ ओवरव्यू ऑफ स्ट्रक्चरल ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन ऑफ द इकोनॉमी. डिफरेंट एराज में पाकिस्तान इकोनॉमी किस तरह से परफॉर्म करती आई है और किस तरह से ग्रेजुअली पाकिस्तान की इकोनॉमी एग्रीकल्चरल इकोनॉमी से ट्रांसफॉर्म हो गई है एक डाइवर्सिफाइड प्रोडक्शन स्ट्रक्चर में. और आप ये कह सकते हैं कि हम अपनी पाकिस्तान की इकोनॉमी की डेवलपमेंट की कहानी को डिस्कस करेंगे. सो आवर ओन डेवलपमेंटल नैरेटिव इन दिस फर्स्ट मॉड्यूल. इसके लिए हम सबसे पहले एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट और बहुत पिवटल इकोनॉमिक इंडिकेटर लेते हैं जो कि एक ग्लांस में हमें ये बताएगा कि पाकिस्तान की इकोनॉमी किस तरह से स्ट्रक्चरली ट्रांसफॉर्म हो गई है. दैट इज मेजर कंट्रीब्यूटिंग सेक्टर टुवर्ड्स द नेशनल इनकम ऑफ द कंट्री और सेक्टोरल कंट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ जीडीपी. 1947 में 1949 में पाकिस्तान की जो सेक्टोरल कंट्रीब्यूशन टुवर्ड्स द जीडीपी देखा जाए तो एग्रीकल्चर वाज कंट्रीब्यूटिंग अराउंड 53% टुवर्ड्स द जीडीपी एंड मोर देन 65% ऑफ आवर पॉपुलेशन फोर्स लेबर फोर्स वाज एंगेज्ड विद दिस सेक्टर. एंड मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर, जैसे कि हमने पहले मॉड्यूल वीडियो 1 में डिस्कस किया था कि बहुत नेग्लिजिबल इंडस्ट्रियल बेस थी, तो उसकी बुनियाद पे मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर का जो कंट्रीब्यूशन था 1947 में और 48 और 49 में, दैट रिमेन्स वेरी मिनिमल 7.8% ओनली. और फिर ट्रेड है, ट्रेड वाज 11.9% in 1949, बट in 2017 now एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर कंट्रीब्यूशन टुवर्ड्स द जीडीपी इज 19.5% ओनली, और हमारी 42.3% लेबर फोर्स जो है वो एग्रीकल्चर से एंगेज है नाउ. एंड देन इंडस्ट्रियल सेक्टर कंट्रीब्यूशन टुवर्ड्स जीडीपी इज 21% नाउ, एंड द मेजर कंट्रीब्यूटिंग सेक्टर्स टुवर्ड्स द नेशनल इनकम और जीडीपी इज सर्विसिंग सेक्टर. सो दैट शोज अ ह्यूज चेंज इन ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन. दिस स्लाइड शोज टू डिफरेंट पाई चार्ट्स. 1949 में जीडीपी कंट्रीब्यूशन क्या थी डिफरेंट सेक्टर्स की, और 2017 में क्या है. 1949 में एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर वाज द मेजर कंट्रीब्यूटर, देन comes others, trade and manufacturing. But in 2017, the major contributing sector is servicing sector. So this picture or this pie chart or this one indicator shows at a glance that how economy has structurally transformed, or you can say that there comes huge transformation in terms of economic and social or political power from agriculturist population towards an urban and rural middle class. This is one of the key indicators that highlights that extraordinary changes, extraordinary structural transformation of the Pakistan economy over the time period. So this is all about the second video of module 1, structural transformation, जिसमें हमने ये देखा कि structural transformation बेसिकली मतलब क्या होता है, और हमने एक वेरिएबल लेके एट अ ग्लांस वी ट्राई टू शो दैट हाउ पाकिस्तान इकोनॉमी व्हिच वाज प्रीडोमिनेंटली एग्रेरियन हैज ट्रांसफॉर्म्ड इनटू डाइवर्सिफाइड प्रोडक्शन स्ट्रक्चर. कि स्ट्रक्चरल ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन जो है वो पाकिस्तान इकोनॉमी पे किस तरह से अप्लाई हुई है. तो अब हम नेक्स्ट वीडियो में वन बाय वन इकोनॉमिक हिस्ट्री ऑफ द इकोनॉमी डिस्कस करेंगे, जो कि डिफरेंट एराज में डिवाइडेड है. आउटलाइन ऑलरेडी आपको मैंने बता दी हुई है. सो सी इन द नेक्स्ट वीडियो फॉर डिस्कशन ओवर द इकोनॉमिक हिस्ट्री ऑफ द कंट्री which is spread among the different economic eras of the Pakistan economy. I hope you have enjoyed the second video. See you. So this is the third video of module 1. First two videos में हमने डिस्कस किया कि structural transformation का मतलब क्या होता है and how the structural transformation is applied to the Pakistan economy. Then we had discussed the outline of the module 1 structural transformation. That outline is basically the division of economic history among different economic eras or 70 years of Pakistan economy. So now today in the third video we are going to formally start up the discussion over different economic eras in Pakistan economy or 70 years of development, 70 decades of Pakistan economy. या आम जुबान में हम पाकिस्तान की इकोनॉमी की कहानी स्टार्ट करने जा रहे हैं, जो कि 7 अशरों पे मबनी है. तो हम पहला अशार स्टार्ट करेंगे थर्ड वीडियो में. So Pakistan now is less than half of the country it was in 1947. Like 55% of population was living in East Pakistan, whereas West Pakistan was 6 times more than the East Pakistan geographically. So till 1971, when we lost East Pakistan, the contribution of East Pakistan towards the society and economy was huge, which we'll be discussing during discussion of the first two eras of Pakistan economy. So first era, laying the foundation 47 से लेके 58 तक. अच्छा स्टूडेंट्स, हम एक economic era के अंदर 3 different चीजें जरूर डिस्कस करेंगे. Number one, we'll be discussing the features of that specific economic era, economic features obviously. Then we'll be discussing the policies which proved to be fruitful for the Pakistan economy in that specific era. Or third thing we're going to discuss is those policies which proved to be negative or which proved to be harmful for the Pakistan economy in that specific era. So first of all, features of the Pakistan economy at the time of independence. So all of us know school time period से हम पाकिस्तान स्टडीज में पढ़ते आ रहे हैं कि पाकिस्तान एक ज़राई मुल्क है या ज़राई मुल्क था. पाकिस्तान का 70% पॉपुलेशन डायरेक्टली और इनडायरेक्टली ज़राअत से मुंसलिक थी, 65% से ज़्यादा, एंड देन 53% कंट्रीब्यूशन जो था वो जीडीपी में या नेशनल इनकम में वो एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर से था. मोर देन 90% ऑफ एक्सपोर्ट्स वाज एग्रीकल्चरल आउटपुट इन 1949. So Pakistan was predominantly an agrarian economy. It was underdeveloped economy, newly independent economy, as we had already discussed, lack of financial resources and negligible level of economic infrastructure and lack of financial resources as well. So very little industry and few services was available. So development of an economic base was left with the state sector because private sector was lack of financial resources. We had adverse international condition being this newly established economy and precarious domestic conditions. Precarious in the sense that Pakistan में जो migrants थे, around 7 million migrants Muslims migrated towards Pakistan as compared to 5.6 million migrants of Hindu and Sikhs towards from Pakistan. So Pakistan के ऊपर migrants का pressure ज़्यादा था and we were having lack of financial resources as well as compared to India. सो उस टाइम पीरियड पे ब्यूरोक्रेसी का फोकस सिर्फ ये था कि पाकिस्तान अपने पैरों पे खड़ा हो सके, और वी वर हैविंग लैक ऑफ कैपिटल, लैक ऑफ फाइनेंशियल रिसोर्सेज. सो डेवलपमेंट प्लानिंग पाकिस्तान में स्टार्ट हुई इन 1950s फर्स्ट टाइम. 1951 में फर्स्ट कोलंबो प्लान जो है वो लॉन्च हुआ, जिसके तहत ₹2600 मिलियन वाज अलॉटेड टू डिफरेंट डेवलपमेंटल प्रोजेक्ट्स. So major focus was the provision of basic necessities, at least food, clothing and shelter to newly migrated Muslims to Pakistan and rehabilitation of those migrants. So in the policy success, those policies which we had gained towards the Pakistan economy at that time, Pakistan adopted focus of Pakistan's development policies were towards industrial growth, as we had a negligible level of industrial base at that time period. So as a result, manufacturing sector of Pakistan in 1952 around showed remarkable progress and 34% growth, which was ever highest at that time period among all the world. So secondly, Pakistan adopted in 1952 import substitution industrialization. According to that, Pakistan put a ban over the luxury goods imports and import of cotton textiles. So these steps basically proved to be very fruitful later on for industrial sector development in Pakistan economy. देन कोरियन वॉर, दैट एडेड अ लॉट. कोरियन वॉर की वजह से रॉ मटेरियल की वर्ल्ड प्राइसेस में बूम आया और पाकिस्तान के प्राइवेट पब्लिक सेक्टर दोनों ने ही इससे गेन किया. सो लेटर ऑन दैट कैपिटल और दैट दोज प्रॉफिट्स वर ट्रांसलेटेड इनटू कैपिटल फॉर्मेशन इन पाकिस्तान एंड लेटर ऑन प्रूव टू बी हेल्पफुल फॉर इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन इन पाकिस्तान. बट द मेजर पॉलिसी फेलियर ऑफ दैट टाइम पीरियड वाज neglection of agriculture sector. So obviously the agriculture sector was neglected, being focused over the industrial growth. So agriculture sector showed negative trend. Agricultural growth remains showing decline in agricultural growth in all the time period of first economic era. There were external factors as well, like the major external factor was severe floods in Punjab and Sindh in 1948. Secondly, to meet the requirements of exceeding expenditures over the revenues, Pakistan adopted the policy of deficit financing throughout this time period. So that also translated into the inflation in the later time period. So this is all about the first era of Pakistan economy, laying the foundation, which had three different dimensions: features and policy success and policy failures. In the next era, we're going to discuss that how Pakistan economy is shifted towards an era which later on we call as a golden era of Pakistan economy, the developmental decade. See you in the next video. So far, goodbye from the third video. Welcome to the second economic era of Pakistan's economic history. We are discussing 70 years of Pakistan economy or 7 decades of development. We are basically discussing structural transformation, first module, in which we are discussing how Pakistan economy has structurally transformed in 7 decades. हमने पहला decade डिस्कस किया लास्ट वीडियो में, which was laying the foundation, जिसमें हमने देखा कि पाकिस्तान जब बना था तो उसकी क्या इकोनॉमिक फैक्ट्स एंड फिगर्स थे और पहले 10 सालों में क्या इकोनॉमिक पॉलिसीज रही और उनके क्या रिजल्ट्स रहे. आज हम डिस्कस करेंगे सेकंड इकोनॉमिक एरा विच स्टार्टेड विद द मिलिट्री टेकओवर इन अक्टूबर 1958. दैट मीन्स दिस वाज मार्शल लॉ गवर्नमेंट एंड दिस टाइम पीरियड इज फेमस टू बी द गोल्डन टाइम पीरियड ऑफ पाकिस्तान इकोनॉमिक हिस्ट्री और पाकिस्तान इकोनॉमी. इन दैट टाइम पीरियड पाकिस्तान इकोनॉमी यूज्ड टू बी कोटेड अमंग द अदर डेवलप्ड इकोनॉमी एज अ रोल मॉडल और इसको गोल्डन टाइम पीरियड इसलिए कहते हैं कि पाकिस्तान शोड इंप्रेसिव फैक्ट्स एंड फिगर्स विद रिगार्ड टू द इकोनॉमिक इंडिकेटर्स इन ऑल द सेक्टर्स ऑफ द इकोनॉमी. सो in among all the 7 decades of Pakistan economy, this remains or this stands out as the best performance decade. That's why in this perspective its name is decade of development. The decade of development 1958 to 1968, Pakistan showed considerable economic growth among all the other countries. Pakistan 1947 से 68 तक पहले 20 सालों में Pakistan had highest growth rate in South Asia. Economic policy making was the major focus of the government. Pakistan economy was considered a model capitalist economy. There was highest growth rate in manufacturing sector. पहले 10 सालों में भी 50s में भी and then 60s में भी. So according to World Bank 2002 report, Pakistan exported more manufactured than Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines and Turkey combined in 1965. So you can well imagine that growth and development in the manufacturing sector in that time period. Then there was progress in the agriculture sector. We had discussed in the last video that in the first 10 years of Pakistan economy, agriculture sector was neglected. So that's why that showed a declining trend in the growth of agriculture sector. But in this time period, government had a focus on the agriculture sector as well, increase in the exports due to protection of domestic industry. The manufacturing sector grew and due to betterment in the agriculture sector, exports increases and inflow of the American aid due to 1965 war. In this water treaty, very important document, Pakistan and India had a dispute over the water of the rivers flowing to Pakistan. So 1960s में एक important document के जरिए इसका solution हुआ, that was in this water treaty. उसने भी problem solution ने भी agriculture sector की improvement में important role play किया. There were water and power investment, huge investment were made in the water and power sector in this decade of development. That added to the betterment of the society. Then comes 1965 war, which disrupted the momentum of growth and development in Pakistan economy. And the last and very important, painful the feature of this time period is the increase in the regional disparity. Economic and political tensions grew between the two regions of Pakistan economy, East and West Pakistan, majorly. पॉलिसी सक्सेस ऑफ द सेकेंड इकोनॉमिक एरा. वैसे तो इस डिकेड ऑफ डेवलपमेंट में इकोनॉमिक पॉलिसीज रिमेन सक्सेसफुल. दैट्स वाई ऑल द सेक्टर्स शो ग्रोथ एंड डेवलपमेंट. बट विल बी डिस्कसिंग एंड मेंशनिंग फ्यू फीचर्स विद रिगार्ड टू द पॉलिसी सक्सेस एंड विल हैव लिटिल डिस्कशन ओवर दैट. इन डिटेल हम उसको डिस्कस करेंगे जब हम लेटर ऑन चैप्टर्स को डिस्कस करेंगे इन द कोर्स. सो इकोनॉमिक एंड सोशल रिफॉर्म्स वर द मेजर एजेंडा ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट एज वी डिस्कस. इकोनॉमिक एंड सोशल रिफॉर्म्स इंक्लूडेड इकोनॉमिक पॉलिसी मेकिंग एंड प्रोविजन ऑफ फूड टू द पॉपुलेशन. एंड सोशल रिफॉर्म्स इंक्लूडेड a number of commissions which make and review the policies and make recommendations for the betterment of social sectors, education and health. Although in the end very negligible or little or no progress was made on these accounts, but economic policy making remained focus of the government. The transformation of the economy in these 10 years of the Pakistan economy as compared to the first 10 years of Pakistan economy was huge, and the result this was the result of basically two basic economic policies. One is massive increase in the investment. Like investment, gross fixed investment increased threefold in these 10 years of Pakistan economy. It was 8% of the GDP in 1958 and increased to more than 14% in of the GDP in till 1968. So threefold increase in the gross fixed investment. Secondly, technological breakthrough in the agriculture sector. अगर आपको याद हो तो हमने डिस्कस किया था कि पहले 10 सालों में एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर वाज नेग्लेक्टेड एंड द फोकस ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट वाज ऑन इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन और मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर. सो इन this time period, government had a focus on the agriculture sector as well. So agriculture sector remained showing a good statistics. Agriculture sector grew at 5% per annum throughout these 10 years. This was a result of the focus on the policies. Significant investment was made on the water resources. Then incentives to the farmers, then increased use of fertilizers and pesticides, and the increased use of high yielding varieties of rice and wheat. So all these steps results in increase in the agriculture sector growth. So in the agriculture sector, maybe very important mechanization of agriculture sector, technological breakthrough in agriculture sector. The policies, economic policies were very much coordinated. Price stability was important feature of that time period, and policy success you could say. Prices जो थी inflation थी, that remained in control in these 10 years of Pakistan economy. So policy failure. This decade of development is also considered as a controversial decade with the context of the economic policy failure. Although the economic policies results out in the impressive growth in all the sectors of the economy, but the focus of the government was the concentration of the wealth among the highest class of the economy. Because of the economic reasons behind this policy, deliberate action was that the assumption that rich saves more. So this saving would be utilized for the further investment, and that results out to be the more industrialization and development in all the other sectors. So ये जो deliberate economic policy थी, ये concentration of wealth की, इसने बहुत जो बड़ा नुकसान किया वो ये था कि 3 तरह की different जो है ना disparities create हुई. One is regional disparity, then income inequality, then functional inequality. One was regional disparity. Regional disparity in a sense that there was the feeling of utter neglect with the East Pakistan. The resources were not fairly distributed among the East and West Pakistan, and the fruits of development were not fairly distributed among the East and West Pakistan. So in the end, there was demand of full economic autonomy by the East Pakistan, and that results out to be the separate country, or Bangladesh was created in 1971. So income inequality, the concentration of economic power, few families acquired most of the national wealth. If you remember that we had studied कि मुल्क की जो कौमी जो दौलत है, हमारी जो मुल्क की दौलत है उस टाइम पीरियड पे वो कुछ फैमिलीज में कॉन्सेंट्रेट होकर रह गई थी. लाइक 21 और 22 फैमिलीज को कोट किया जाता है कि सारी जो है कौमी आमदनी वो मेजर जो थी वो इन 20-22 फैमिलीज के पास थी, एंड दैट वाज टू सम एक्सटेंट ट्रू इन अ सेंस दैट वाज डेलिबरेट पॉलिसी ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट to distribute more towards the rich because of the intention that they save more. All the savings were increased, but that results out to be income inequality. That the perpetuation of industrial and trade policies could not be maintained, जो कि 1950s के time period पे adopt की गई थी. Then functional inequality, although economic policies results out to be showing the best performance in all the sectors of the economy, agriculture sector हो, manufacturing the major focus of these two sectors, agriculture and manufacturing. But on the social sector, the improvement of the quality of life with provision of the basic facilities like education and health, that was totally neglected. So there was functional inequality. Which can be quoted as neglection in the education sector, health sector, and little increase in the real wage. So if we have an assessment of the decade of development, we come to the conclusion that government of that time period was very much committed to development. That is determined. Development momentum was seriously disrupted by the 1965 war. Like foreign aid का जो है वो इनफ्लो कम हो गया, और हमें डिफेंस स्पेंडिंग को बहुत ज़्यादा इंक्रीज़ करना पड़ा. इन दो फैक्टर्स की वजह से इन्वेस्टमेंट जो थी वो बहुत कम हो गई. And सबसे important जो है assessment, या you could say the painful fact of that time period was growing economic disparity between these two regions. So besides the economic success and the important economic policy failure which results out to be the disparity, regional disparity among East and West Pakistan, this decade or this era was an exceptionally successful period of economic management. We can have a good example of that time period or the decade of development. I hope कि आपको ये सारा time period discuss जो हमने किया वो क्लियर हो गया होगा. You need to have a thorough reading of this era from your recommended book and the other reference material. We'll be discussing the next era in the next video. For today, it's all. Have a good day. So hope you're doing well, guys. आज हम स्टार्ट करेंगे थर्ड इकोनॉमिक एरा. इससे पहले हमने दो इकोनॉमिक एरास को डिस्कस किया है, और जैसा कि आप जानते हैं वी आर डिस्कसिंग द फर्स्ट मॉड्यूल स्ट्रक्चरल ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन, इन विच वी आर डिस्कसिंग द इकोनॉमिक हिस्ट्री ऑफ द कंट्री, 7 decades of development or 7 decades story of the Pakistan economy. We had discussed the first decade, laying the foundation. Then we discussed the second decade, which was developmental decade or the golden era of the Pakistan's economy. आज हम third decade को डिस्कस करेंगे. You might find the stuff a little boring, but we have to go through it because this is a requirement of the course, and I'm trying to be very precise and trying to cover all the important economic incidents and economic happenings of these time periods. And you're also advised to go through the recommended book for thorough understanding of the concepts. तो आज हम स्टार्ट करेंगे थर्ड इकोनॉमिक era. starting with the bad luck years 1971 till 1977. So सबसे बड़ा change जो था structural transformation जो थी geographically as well as economically, that was a division of Pakistan. Pakistan was divided into two different wings, West Pakistan and East Pakistan. East Pakistan became the new country with the name of Bangladesh, and we are left with the West Pakistan in which we are living today. So that was the big structural transformation of this time. Then the elected government of the time adopted the policy, or the focus was to bring to social justice in the society, which was major controversy of the last time period, if you remember. So कि जो economic resources हैं, जो fruits of development है, वो fairly distributed नहीं है, जिसकी वजह से बहुत सारी जो है ना regional disparities create हो गई थी. तो जो आने वाली elected government थी, उसका focus था कि हम social justice को लेकर आएं. Social justice को लाने के लिए they adopted the policy, they bring fundamental and structural changes in institutional changes, structural changes in economic, political and social sector. So the major focus of the government was to bring into social justice. So first of all, the government adopted the policy of nationalization, bailing out those units which come out of the stream due to stoppage of foreign aid. Government nationalized them. Government further increased the state capitalism by nationalizing all the other banking sector, small and big industrial units, insurance companies and education. So this was the first step of this time period, or major step of this time period. Then this time period also experienced an oil price shock. 1973 में worldwide oil prices जो हैं वो rise हुई, और उसका बहुत सारी economies के ऊपर बहुत effect हुआ. Pakistan being the developmental or developing economy, हमारा जो major effect था oil price shock का, that was that our balance of payment was deteriorated or badly affected. Then in this time period, government adopted the policy of devaluation of the Pakistani rupee. So devaluation की वजह से Pakistan had increase in the foreign exchange earnings as compared to the previous two time periods. So बैड लक ईयर की फर्दर फीचर्स में अगर देखें तो इस टाइम पीरियड में जो एक और एक्सपीरियंस किया गवर्नमेंट ने, दैट वाज वर्ल्ड वाइड रिसेशन. वर्ल्ड वाइड रिसेशन की वजह से वी हैड एक्सपीरियंस ऑफ डिक्लाइन इन आवर एक्सपोर्ट्स. सेकेंडली द बैड लक ऑफ दिस टाइम पीरियड ऑल्सो दैट दिस गवर्नमेंट और दिस टेन्योर फेसेस टू मैसिव फ्लड्स. 1973 में भी आया और 1974 में भी आया. उन फ्लड्स की वजह से एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर इफेक्ट हुआ, ऑब्वियसली सोशल सेक्टर इफेक्ट हुआ, और एग्रीकल्चर के सेक्टर के इफेक्ट होने से देयर आर लिंकेजेस, यू नो, जो आउटपुट है एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर की, दैट इज इनपुट ऑफ द इंडस्ट्रियल सेक्टर एंड कंजम्पशन बाय द कंज्यूमर. सो all the linkages sectors are affected. So this was the second bad thing of the time, massive floods. Then this time period also experienced the worst inflation. Fiscal deficit which started in the last time period widened further. So policy success क्या रही? Although bad luck year had poor performance, economic perspective में, but there was one thing that foreign exchange earnings हमारी increase हुई. We had discussed that government deliberately adopted the policy of devaluation of currency, due to which we had increase in the foreign exchange earning besides the global recession. The biggest step taken by this government was investment in the big industries. So बड़ी industries में या बड़े investment projects में investment इस government ने first time की. Then as we had already discussed, the focus of the government or the slogan started by this elected government to bring the social justice. So land और labor reforms के ऊपर बहुत काम किया गया. So these were the policy failures. First of all, as the government adopted the policy of nationalization or state capitalism, so this state capitalism policy discouraged the private sector. So private sector investment was declined, and that remained declined for the rest of the 20 years. They badly affected the private sector investment. Secondly, as we had discussed, कि इस गवर्नमेंट ने मेगा प्रोजेक्ट्स में इन्वेस्ट किया था. सो मेगा प्रोजेक्ट्स जो हैं वो ऑपरेशनल होने में और अपने रिजल्ट्स आने में टाइम लेते हैं, लॉन्ग जेस्टेशन पीरियड होता है. तो उस टाइम गैप में देयर कम्स इन्फ्लेशनरी प्रेशर इन द सोसाइटी. सो देयर आर अदर फैक्टर्स टू, बट दिस वाज अ मेजर फैक्टर. सो इन्फ्लेशन गेट्स टू द पीक ऑफ द टाइम, दैट वाज 15% per annum. So result of the inflation was the classes, the society and the people were affected. The real incomes of the people declined, or you could say the badly affected. GDP growth was declined. If you remember, last era में developmental decade में we had seen, and the first 10 years and the next 10 years, last 20 years से we had seen the manufacturing sector was on increasing or good growth rate. Last developmental decade में manufacturing sector grew at 16% per annum before 65 war, then 10% per annum post 65 war. Agriculture sector remained on 5% per annum growth. Now in this time period, agriculture sector declined to 2.4% per annum growth, and manufacturing sector declined to 5% per annum growth. So there was overall trend of declining the growth of the different sectors. So overall GDP growth was also declined. That was a major failure of the government in the economic perspective. So bad luck year's next policy failure. So next policy failure, as the expenditure on defense and administration increases. So इसके नतीजे में हमारी fiscal constraint हुई, and we had increase in the budget deficit. Then a decrease in the developmental expenditure, as we had discussed that there was increase in the defense expenditure and general administration expenditure. Developmental expenditure जो था वो कम हुआ, और उसके कम होने की वजह से overall employment generation जो थी वो कम हो गई. So employment decreased. Then the last concluding remark of the time or these bad luck years, that the socialism experience of this government leaves negative impact on the society and especially on the economy in the economic perspective. So this was all about today's lecture. आज हमने थर्ड इकोनॉमिक एरा को डिस्कस किया है. इससे पहले हमने फर्स्ट एरा डिस्कस किया और फिर नेक्स्ट डेवलपमेंटल डिकेड को डिस्कस किया. टुडे वी हैड डिस्कस द बैड लक ईयर्स 1971 से लेकर 1977 तक, और फाइनली कंक्लूड किया कि इस टाइम पीरियड में ओवरऑल अगर हम देखा जाए तो इकोनॉमिक परफॉर्मेंस जो थी वो हो रही है. नेक्स्ट टाइम पीरियड वी विल बी डिस्कसिंग द नेक्स्ट मिलिट्री रिजीम विच वाज 1977 to 1988. विल बी डिस्कसिंग इन द नेक्स्ट वीडियो. अभी तक हमने 3 एरा डिस्कस किए हैं, एंड यू आर एडवाइज टू हैव द थॉरो रीडिंग फ्रॉम द बुक्स एज वेल टू कॉम्प्रिहेंड द कॉन्सेप्ट्स. सी यू इन द नेक्स्ट next video, and I hope you're learning with me. Goodbye. Welcome to the next economic era, which is fourth economic era in these 7 decades of development or 70 years of Pakistan's economy. Guys, we are discussing first module, which is structural transformation. इस first module में हम इसको discuss कर रहे हैं पाकिस्तान की economic history, which is spread over the 7 decades, and we had so far discussed 3 different decades, laying the foundation, developmental decade, और last video में हमने discuss किया था bad luck years. आज हम discuss करेंगे fourth era, which is second military regime, which started by the military takeover in July 1977. This era covers the time period from 1977 to 1988. अगर आपको याद हो तो previous era, which is known as bad luck years, में हमने देखा था कि overall economic performance जो थी society की economy की, that was not satisfactory. We had seen decline in employment, we had seen decline in the growth rate of the different sectors, we had seen that there was worst inflation. So इस era में overall अगर हम देखें features के में तो economic indicators showed a positive sign. There was improvement in the growth of different sectors and improvement in the overall growth of the GDP that results in the decline in the poverty incidence, decline in the unemployment. The economic policies were very liberal as compared to the previous time periods. There was higher industrial growth as compared to the previous economic era. Besides these positive economic indicators, there was one important factor, negative, which was domestic debt. That kept on increasing in this time period. Defense spending increases, development spending neglected, or you could say there was no increase in the development spending. Fiscal deficit rises in this time period. So first of all, we'll see the positive policies or policy success of the time. पिछले era में हमने ये डिस्कस किया था कि जो हुकूमत है उसने फर्स्ट टाइम हैवी इंडस्ट्रीज में इन्वेस्ट किया. There was public sector investment done, and the heavy industries, the mega projects, started in the last time period, bad luck years में. So those mega projects which were started in the last time period started paying off in this time period, as we had discussed. The long gestation period होता है, तो इस time period में वो उन्होंने pay off करना शुरू कर दिया. Obviously that leaves positive impacts. Secondly, Pakistanis went abroad in the last era or the last time periods. They started sending their remittances, so there was massive inflow of foreign remittances. These two things positively added to the economy for positive indicators of this time period. So foreign remittances increase हुई, और इसके साथ साथ बहुत important बात, इस time period में अफगान war start हुई. So due to that Afghan war, foreign aid increases, and these two factors, increase in the foreign aid and increase in the foreign remittances, first of all help Pakistan economy and eases their its fiscal pressure. हमारा fiscal pressure जो था वो reduce हुआ, political pressure भी reduce हुआ. तो जो 2-3 चीज़ें positive इस era के साथ start के साथ ही थी, वो एक mega projects का startup था, उसकी वजह से employment भी generate हुई, उसकी वजह से इनकम्स भी इंक्रीज हुई, और उसकी वजह से लिंकेजेस सेक्टर्स जो थे वो भी दे स्टार्टेड वर्किंग, और उसकी वजह से इंडस्ट्री जो है वो इंप्रूव हुई. देन सेकेंडली जो हमारे फॉरेन रेमिटेंसेस थे उन्होंने बहुत रोल प्ले किया. फॉरेन रेमिटेंसेस बहुत ज़्यादा मैसिव इन्फ्लो हुआ, फॉरेन एड बहुत मैसिव इन्फ्लो हुआ पाकिस्तान इकोनॉमी में, और इसने हमारा फिस्कल प्रेशर जो है वो काफ़ी हद तक रिड्यूस किया. एक मेजर स्टेप जो इस गवर्नमेंट ने टेकअप किया था वो इस्लामिक इंटरेस्ट फ्री बैंकिंग सिस्टम था. दिस गवर्नमेंट इंट्रोड्यूस्ड द इस्लामिक इंटरेस्ट फ्री बैंकिंग सिस्टम. Islamic interest-free banking system is basically the introduction of the partnership between the entrepreneur and the capital owner on the principle of profit and loss sharing. So this government took the step of an Islamic interest-free banking system in the economy. Then as we had discussed that in this time period, if we observe economic indicators जो थे उन्होंने positive signs दिखाए हैं. Growth, national growth जो थी, GDP growth जो थी वो increase हुई as compared to the previous time period which were bad luck years. Bad luck years में हमने देखा था कि there were massive floods and external factors. उसकी वजह से भी agriculture sector जो था उसने बहुत negative trend देखा गया. इस time period में there were no floods and there were no external factors such as to affect the agriculture sector. So agriculture sector showed overall a steady growth of 4% in these 11 years. Then manufacturing sector, as we had discussed, the industrial sector boom जो था वो आया इस time period में. Again heavy industry started working, so industrial sector और manufacturing sector showed growth in this time period. So industry showing a positive sign, agriculture showing positive sign, inflow of foreign remittances, inflow of foreign aid. So all these positive signs increases the GDP growth overall. So GDP growth जो पिछले tenure में 4.9% थी, that reaches to 6.6% in this second military regime. Then comes analysis. So critical analysis ये है कि इस time period में according to economic analyst 3 strategic factors were ignored, which we can quote in the policy failure. These factors ensure sustainable growth. So first of all, domestic saving rate kept जो public saving थी वो 10% से कम ही रही. Then exports as a percentage of GDP that remains below 10% overall, and exports did not show remarkable growth or any remarkable increase in this time period. Then very important factor or very important thing which was neglected, the investment in the development sector, or you could say there was inadequate investment in economic infrastructure in this time period. So these 3 factors basically ensure sustainable growth. So critical analysis shows that if as we had ignored these 3 factors in this time, so this economic growth may not be sustained in the coming time periods. Then comes negative public saving. This tenure also showed negative public saving and declining public investment, as we had already discussed कि public जो saving थी वो भी कम हुई और public investment भी कम है development sector में particularly. Domestic debt explosion, domestic debt rise हुआ सारे time period में, और domestic debt rise होने की वजह से basically debt servicing which is a major cost to the debt वो rise हुआ. So that was the policy failure, neglect of development spending. अच्छा, इंटरेस्टिंग बात यह है कि पब्लिक सेविंग तो कम थी बट नेशनल सेविंग ओवरऑल दैट वाज एट अ गुड रेट. नेशनल सेविंग टू जीडीपी रेशियो was 16%, but the major portion of this national saving was used to finance the fiscal deficit instead of using in any developmental project or in any in putting into the any sector for investment purposes. इसको हमने fiscal deficit को finance किया. वो fiscal deficit जो था वो basically that was the major result. Fiscal deficit इस time के feature में हमने शुरू में quote किया था कि fiscal deficit rise हुआ. Major reason was non-development expenditure का rise होना था. Development expenditure जो थे वो neglected थे, but non-development expenditure rises and then next जो tendency थी वो tax to GDP ratio decline की tendency थी. So these two factors added to the fiscal deficit, and that fiscal deficit is financed through the national savings and public borrowing. So domestic debt जो था वो that kept on rising, और debt की जो cost है वो जैसे मैंने पहले भी डिस्कस किया that is the debt servicing. So ये overall अगर हम देखें इस fourth economic era को, so that shows good progress, and economic history में इसको second economic revolution के नाम से भी याद किया जाता है. Economic indicators were showing good performance as compared to the previous era of bad luck years. All the economic indicators were showing good sign. Employment हो या agriculture या manufacturing sector, and overall GDP growth भी बेहतर हुआ. जो थोड़ा सा एरिया निगलेक्टेड था या जो क्रिटिकल एनालिसिस है वी हैड कोटेड दैट कि वो 3 स्ट्रेटजिक फैक्टर्स हैं वो निगलेक्टेड थे, और सबसे बड़ा जो कॉन्सिक्वेंस था इस टाइम पीरियड का दैट वाज डोमेस्टिक डेट. That kept on rising throughout the time period, and the cost of this debt is to be paid obviously by the coming economic era. So this is all about the fourth economic era. Second military regime. Next time period है that is structural adjustment era, जो कि हम नेक्स्ट वीडियो में डिस्कस करेंगे. आज के लिए इतना काफ़ी है अभी. So this is the fourth economic era. Overall, this era is an economic success, and we'll discuss the next era, structural adjustment era, in the next video. See you in the next video. Welcome again with the next video. In this video, we'll discuss the fifth economic era. We are discussing first module, structural transformation, और इसमें जो टॉपिक हम डिस्कस कर रहे हैं वो हम डिस्कस कर रहे हैं 70 years of development. 70 years of development को हमने 7 economic eras में डिवाइड किया. अभी तक हमने 4 economic eras को डिस्कस किया है. Let's have the quick revision of the names of those economic eras. We discussed laying the foundation, then we discussed developmental decade, bad luck years, and second military regime. The fifth economic era or the fifth regime is known as structural adjustment era, and this started after the fall of military government in August 1988, and it was democratic time period. Pakistan economy has seen democracy, and this between this era of structural adjustment 1988 to 1999. Before starting the features of this era, हमने थोड़ा सा quickly revise करना है या recall करना है the economic situation of the last era so that we can relate. If you recall, last economic era में हमने conclude किया था कि that was an economic success. जो economic indicators थे different sectors में वो they were showing good sign. GDP growth was better, manufacturing, agriculture, remittances, and other economic factors were having good situation. एक problem था जो rise हो गया था वो था debt problem. So having all this in mind, we are going to start and discuss the features of this era. First of all, as I have already said, democracy was in practice, but in this time period 1988 से 1999 के time में पाकिस्तान में 4 general elections हुए, और besides these 4 general elections there were some caretaker governments as well. So one can well analyze that there was political instability. कोई हुकूमत भी अपना time period पूरा नहीं कर सकी थी. Corruption was at the peak in governance. Law and order situation was very much worse in this time period. Then inefficient state-owned enterprises and particularly banks. So access to capital was restricted. And then the problem which we had quoted last time period में debt problem. So debt crisis was the major problem of this time. इस era को हम debt crisis era भी बोलते हैं क्योंकि बहुत बड़ा unsustainable problem हो गया था वो debt problem था. Then economic liberalization was there, and finally the structural adjustment program, the impact or the role of IMF and World Bank, and or you could say international financial institutions. So starting with the policy success, although the economic policies of the time were not a complete success, but they were adopted for the betterment, and they somehow to be successful and remain successful in some aspects. तो सबसे पहले गवर्नमेंट ने 1991 में इकोनॉमिक लिबरलाइजेशन की मेजर पॉलिसीज या रिफॉर्म्स इंट्रोड्यूस कराई. ऑल्दो ये रिफॉर्म्स के बावजूद जो टारगेट एरियाज थे एक्सपोर्ट एंड प्राइवेट इन्वेस्टमेंट थी दैट रिमेन स्टेगनेंट. उसकी रीज़न मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक इंस्टेबिलिटी या पोर मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक मैनेजमेंट या करप्शन इन गवर्नेंस और एनी अदर इकोनॉमिक इंडिकेटर इकोनॉमिक सिचुएशन, बट द पॉलिसी विच वॉज अडॉप्टेड फॉर द बेटरमेंट ऑफ और फॉर द इम्प्रूवमेंट ऑफ एक्सपोर्ट्स could not prove to be successful. That remained stagnant. Then privatization done by the government privatized state-owned banks and enterprises, and that results out to be 2 improvements. One, एक तो गवर्नमेंट जो सब्सिडीज दे रही थी इन डिफरेंट इंस्टीट्यूशंस को उसके ऊपर प्रेशर कम हुआ. सेकेंडली जो इन इंस्टीट्यूशंस की सर्विसेज थी वो इंप्रूव हो गई प्राइवेटाइज होने की वजह से. देन government had the policy of energy in 1994, private power policy of 1994. It is said first time government encouraged the private sector to install independent power generation plants. So उसका एक फ़ायदा तो ये हुआ कि हमारी जो पावर कैपेसिटी थी या पावर जनरेशन थी वो इंप्रूव हो गई. ऑल्दो उसकी कॉस्ट ये है कि उसकी प्राइस बहुत ज़्यादा थी, बट दैट वाज अ पॉलिसी सक्सेस in terms of improvement in the policy power capacity generation. So now policy failures. पॉलिसी फेलियर्स में हम सबसे पहले डिस्कस करेंगे कि डेट क्राइसिस को एज आई ऑलरेडी कोटेड कि इस टाइम पीरियड को हम डेट क्राइसिस एरा भी बोलते हैं। डेट क्राइसिस को अंडरस्टैंड करने के लिए, डेट क्राइसिस की सीरियसनेस को अंडरस्टैंड करने के लिए, जैसे फिगर कि 1977 में पब्लिक डेट टू जीडीपी रेशियो वाज 57.5%, इट टर्न्ड आउट टू बी 102% in 1998-1999. So that indicates the seriousness of the issue or seriousness of the problem, which is debt crisis. Then beside debt crisis, there was rising unemployment. अब चूँकि macroeconomic situation was worsened, private investment was stagnant, there was corruption in governance and other factors too. So employment जो थी वो improve नहीं, इसकी बहुत बड़ी reason ये भी थी कि पिछले era में भी और खास तौर पे इस era में भी developmental expenditure much needed जो expenditures थे वो neglect हुए, और rather इस time period में we had reduced the development expenditure due to the instructions of international financial institutions as we have taken help from them. So developmental expenditure decline हुए इसकी वजह से, और बहुत सारे other factors जो मैंने भी कोट किए, employment जनरेशन नहीं हुई तो unemployment जो है वो rise हो गई, external deficit बहुत ज़्यादा हुआ, foreign debt to GDP ratio was also increased, foreign debt rather tripled in this time period, worst inflation जो है हमने देखी इस time period में, second worst inflation in the time period of this structural adjustment era, GDP growth was reduced, poverty increased. अब हम already discuss कर रहे हैं कि economic situation जो थी वो काफ़ी ख़राब थी in a sense that we had macroeconomic instability, private investors were not investing, or private investment you could say that remained stagnant. There was decline in the developmental expenditure, and the poverty reduction strategy or poverty reduction programs were not focused. So poverty increased, employment decreased, and that results in the decrease in the GDP growth. So the way the government was dealing with the fiscal crisis, that basically added to the situation, and that basically worsened the situation further. Government took help from the domestic debt and the foreign debt. So worker remittances were declined due to the poor economic performance of the country, or worsened law and order situation. Governance में corruption थी, तो worker remittances जो थी वो भी decline हुई, and external debt जो था जिसमें मैंने कोट किया इस टाइम पीरियड में ट्रिपल हो गया था. We had taken help from foreign aid. Economic difficulties further increase हुई. Last time period में we had two important helping factors. One was economic aid or US aid due to Afghan war, and secondly inflow of foreign remittances. So US aid जो है वो withdraw हो गई in this time period में, और economic sanctions impose हुई पाकिस्तान पे 1998 में. You must remember we had atomic explosion. So उसके बाद economic sanctions हुई, हमारे foreign currency accounts freeze हो गए. So इस वजह से जो investor confidence था वो shake हुआ, remittances भी कम हुई, और investment further जो है वो decline हो गई. Then the other major step taken by Pakistan government was we adopted structural adjustment program of IMF, and you could say we took help from international financial institutions, IMF and World Bank at this time period. So since that time period till now, Pakistan had lost its economic freedom in a sense that let's take an example that according to structural adjustment program, Pakistan had to decline its development expenditure, and besides the declining development expenditure, there were unproductive expenditure remained on the same pace. So much needed areas were neglected, development expenditure or poverty reduction or employment generation. So that results out to the poor performance of this whole time period, and we had also lost economic freedom because we took help from the national financial institutions, and every lending by these institutions is basically attached to some conditionalities. We had religiously followed those conditions, so economic growth continuously kept declining in this time period. The major problems of the time or the reasons behind were macroeconomic instability, political instability, poor governance in these 10 years, and besides all these factors, चूँकि इकोनॉमिक की इंटरनल सिचुएशन इतनी पोर पिक्चर शो करी थी, सो देयर वाज अनफेवरेबल एक्सटर्नल एनवायरनमेंट एज वेल, एंड वी हैड आल्सो टेकन एक्सटर्नल हेल्प इन द फॉर्म. सो समिंग अप ऑल दिस टाइम पीरियड ऑफ structural adjustment era, we can quote that although governments of different times tries to improve the economic situation, and somehow they succeeded to at least maintain a base good in agriculture, good in manufacturing, but they could not be succeeded due to all these factors which were political and other economic factors. So we cannot say that this was an economic success. This was a time of macroeconomic instability. This is all about today's economic era, which is fifth economic era, structural adjustment. In the next era, we'll discuss again the next dictatorship time period, which started in 1999, or before starting that time period, or the next video, I'll suggest कि आप जो पिछली वीडियोस थी, जो different time periods हमने so far discuss किए हैं, आप उनको quickly एक दफ़ा देख लें, और ताकि आपके ज़हन में रहे कि how we are seeing our economy gradually, that structural transformation process जो है वो किस तरह से हुआ. See you in the next video, and I hope that you are learning with me with these different economic eras. Have a good day. Welcome to the next video, which is sixth economic era. So far we had discussed the 5 different economic eras in the course of issues in Pakistan economy, and the first module which we are discussing is structural transformation, and the topic which we are discussing is 70 years of Pakistan economy, or 7 different decades. 7 decades में हमने 5 decades discuss कर लिए हैं अभी तक different videos में. आज की वीडियो में हम 6th economic era को discuss करेंगे. The 6th economic era is basically new liberalism or dictatorship time period. That means this was the start of third military government in Pakistan. It started in October 1999 by a military taking over the government, and the time span is between 1999 to 2007. लेट्स रिकॉल कि हमने पिछले इकोनॉमिक ईरा में क्या डिस्कस किया था और क्या कंक्लूड किया था. वी हैड कंक्लूडेड दैट वाज द टाइम पीरियड ऑफ मैक्रोइकोनॉमिक इंस्टेबिलिटी एंड all the economic indicators were showing poor economic performance. And finally, in 1998, we had use of nuclear weapons, or you could say economic explosions, due to which our country faced economic sanctions. So 1999 में Pakistan was most sanctioned country. Besides this, if you look at the economic indicators or economic performance of different sectors in this time period, there was remarkable improvement in all the indicators. GDP growth kept on rising in all this time period. We had seen decline in the budget deficit. We had seen increase in the foreign exchange reserves. There was increase in the unemployment throughout this time period. Real estate, which is an important sector of the country, that seen development. Huge investment was done in this sector in this time period. Modern services sector was developed in this time period. Then foreign direct investment continuously increased in this time period. So these were the few features which I have quoted in front of you, elaborating this time period or economic picture of this time period. Now, policy success. Policy success में it's very important to recall that what was the economic situation of that time. That was the time period of macroeconomic instability. Economy was performing poorly in the last 10 years. So first of all, the government of this time formulated comprehensive set of reforms for targeting two areas. One, for the revival of the economy, that was much needed. Secondly, if you recall, we had quoted that there was huge corruption in the governance. तो उसको एड्रेस करने के लिए reforms formulate हुई to establish institutional basis for improvement in the governance, और institutional governance को improve किया गया. उसके लिए policies बनी और implement भी हुई. So we had seen substantial improvement in all the economic indicators in this time period. That was a policy success. जैसे कि पहले भी मैंने बताया कि तकरीबन सारे ही indicators बहुत अच्छी पिक्चर शो करते हैं सारे टाइम पीरियड में. इन्वेस्टमेंट जो बहुत ज़्यादा डिक्लाइन कर गई थी लास्ट टाइम पीरियड में, उसकी बहुत सारी रीजंस थी. मैक्रोइकोनॉमिक स्टेबिलिटी थी, पॉलिटिकल स्टेबिलिटी थी एंड ऑल दैट. सो इस टाइम पीरियड में इन्वेस्टमेंट जो थी वो कॉन्टिन्यूसली इंक्रीज हुई वो मुल्क में. और उसकी एक छोटी एग्जांपल है कि 2001 में 17.2% ऑफ द GDP was invested and it turns out to be 23% in 2006. So investment increase हुई, which is always fruitful for the economy. Then foreign direct investment, which is very important. इस सारे circumstances में government somehow managed to attract foreign investors. So there was huge foreign investment this time period. Or we had gained investor confidence. Foreign direct investment also ensures improvement in the macroeconomic indicators of the country by creating more jobs and capital formation. GDP per capita continuously increases. As I have quoted, the last time period had seen poor economic performance. GDP per capita was remained lower than 3%. And in this time, starting with 3.9% in 1999, it reaches to ever high more than 8% in 2004 and 5, and then it reaches to 6 and 7% in 2006 and 7. So इस सारे time period में बहुत poor start of GDP growth से लेके we had seen remarkable improvement in GDP growth. In this dictatorship time period. Stock exchange की performance बहुत अच्छी थी. 2002 में Karachi Stock Exchange was considered the best equities market of South Asia. We had again a good title. एजुकेशन सेक्टर जो कि बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. एजुकेशन सेक्टर की एक्सपेंशन बहुत ज़्यादा रही इस टाइम पीरियड में. 9 वर्ल्ड क्लास इंजीनियरिंग यूनिवर्सिटीज हैव बीन स्टार्टेड and 18 public sector universities were launched besides other degree awarding institutions. So huge expansion was done in the education sector, and we had seen improvement in the literacy that reaches to 53%. And then modern services sector already quoted वो डेवलप हुआ. और modern services sector telecom and IT सेक्टर इसमें बहुत ह्यूज जॉब्स क्रिएट हुई. ओनली IT सेक्टर में 90,000 प्लस जॉब्स क्रिएट हुई और टेलीकॉम सेक्टर में 1.3 मिलियन जॉब्स क्रिएट हुई. सो जॉब क्रिएशन रिजल्ट्स आउट टू बी रिडक्शन इन द अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट. बिसाइड्स दिस दीज वर द फ्यू इकोनॉमिक इंडिकेटर्स और इकोनॉमिक सक्सेसेस व्हिच आई हैव कोटेड जो कि बहुत अच्छी पिक्चर शो कर रहे हैं और रिमार्केबल इकोनॉमिक परफॉर्मेंस की पिक्चर हमें नजर आ रही है. लेकिन जो इकोनॉमिक नेग्लिजेंस था दैट इज द पॉलिसी फेलियर. इनफैक्ट पॉवर्टी जो है वो कुछ खास एड्रेस नहीं हुई. पॉवर्टी वैसे ही स्प्रेड रही इकोनॉमी के अंदर. उसकी रीजन शायद ये है कि जिन एरियाज़ में जॉब क्रिएट हुई जिन सेक्टर्स में वो सेक्टर्स पुअर क्लास की जॉब नहीं क्रिएट कर रहे थे. बहुत सिंपल क्लास में पुअर क्लास को टारगेट नहीं कर रहे थे. दैट वर क्रिएटेड इन IT और इन टेलीकॉम और इन अदर सर्विसेज सेक्टर. सो पॉवर्टी का प्रॉब्लम वहीं था. सेकेंडली इन दिस टाइम पीरियड वी हैड सीन अगेन एन अफगान वॉर इफेक्ट एंड दिस टाइम अफगान was invaded with US. So इस दफ़ा US के साथ ही and we had seen inflow of the US aid due to Afghan war to Pakistan. So this inflow in the name of war used to be quoted as dependency on the foreign inflow of resources. So foreign resources के ऊपर हमारी dependency जो थी वो एक policy failure है. Although this time dependency जो है वो बहुत ज़्यादा affect नहीं कर सकती थी क्योंकि हमारी economic performance बहुत अच्छी रही throughout this time period. Then this government first time gave independence to free electronic and press media. तो एक अलग सेक्टर जो है वो फ्लरिश हुआ. पॉलिसी फेलियर में इकोनॉमिक एनालिसिस अगर हम करें थ्रू आउट दिस टाइम पीरियड रिमार्केबल इकोनॉमिक परफॉर्मेंस के बावजूद सस्टेनेबिलिटी जो है वो नहीं इंश्योर हो सकी. दैट द रीजन माइट बी दैट इफ इन्वेस्टमेंट इज डन इन द कंज्यूमर प्रोडक्ट्स एंड डायरेक्ट सर्विसेज दैट कैन नॉट मेक द बेसिस फॉर सस्टेनेबल इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ इन द कंट्री इन द लॉन्ग टर्म. So overall analysis of this time period, अगर हम overall analysis करें इस time period का, तो that was an huge economic success. Many milestones were achieved after the golden era of Pakistan economy. If you recall, second time period 60s का time, उसके बाद इस time को second golden time period of Pakistan economy कहा जाता है कि बहुत ही poor economic performance से start लेने के बाद we had seen remarkable economic growth in various sectors. Manufacturing sector की 30 years high rate, then agriculture sector was showing improvement, education sector expanded, foreign direct investment बहुत ज़्यादा हुई मुल्क के अंदर, jobs create हुई बहुत ज़्यादा. लेकिन कुछ economic negligence है वो हमने quote कर दिया. Sustainability of growth जो थी वो थोड़ा लैक करती है. So this military regime in the Pakistani economy. In the next video we'll be discussing the last economic era. We had to discuss 7 different economic eras or 7 different decades. So guys, you can see हम gradually 6 economic eras को discuss कर चुके हैं. अब हम last economic era को next video में discuss करेंगे, which is again democracy in country. And this was the dictatorship time period or military government, third military government of the Pakistan's economic history. So till the next video I would suggest कि आप सारी जो videos हमने अभी तक जो हमने देखी हैं different eras के ऊपर, उनको thoroughly जो है वो go through कर लें, and we'll be able to complete our 7 decades of development or 70 years की पाकिस्तान की economy की कहानी in next or last video of this topic, 7 decades of development. Till then, have a good day. So finally, we have reached to the 7th economic era. We are discussing first module of the course Issues in Pakistan Economy, and the module name is Structural Transformation, and the topic is 70 years of Pakistan economy. These 70 years are divided into 7 different eras, और अभी तक हमने different videos में 6 eras discuss कर लिए हैं. आज finally हम 7th और last era in the Pakistan's economic history discuss करने जा रहे हैं इस video में. This 7th era started in 2008 with the general elections held in the country. After these general elections, we had seen the democratic government, or you could say democracy comes to the country, and we still have democracy. So these 10 years are based on the democratic government and its analysis on economic indicators. So before starting the features of this 7th era, as per our practice, first of all we recall कि इससे previous जो time period था उसमें country की economic situation क्या थी. If you recall, previous was military government, and in summing up the overall performance of that time period, we can conclude that that was an economic success. All the economic indicators of country showed a remarkable progress in different sectors in that time period, or in the 6th economic era. Now comes the 7th economic era, which is democratic government starting in 2008. अब ये जो 10 साल हैं इसको हम divide करेंगे 2 different time periods में because of 2 different political governments or variation you could say in the economic indicators. First of all, we'll mention the features of 2008 till 13 and then 13 till 2018. So first 5 years. First 5 years में unfortunately the economic progress which country had seen in the last under the last military government, that started falling. GDP growth started declining by the start of this economic era. Then inflation started increasing. Country had already seen a global financial crisis. Then the major problem of these 10 years is foreign debt. So foreign debt started rising by the start of this era. Then corruption was very much prevalent in the country, and then rising unemployment. Here you can well analyze, being a student of economics, कि जब मुल्क में हालात इस तरह के हैं कि अनसर्टेनिटी है, GDP ग्रोथ जो है वो फॉल कर रही है, डेट राइज कर रहा है, टेररिस्ट एक्टिविटीज़ बहुत पीक पे थी, एनर्जी क्राइसिस बहुत ज़्यादा है, तो हाउ कुड वन एक्सपेक्ट द अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट प्रॉब्लम टू बी हैंडल्ड. डेफिनेटली unemployment started rising, the foreign direct investment started falling, and the biggest problem which I have already quoted yet was the energy crisis. Energy crisis इतना बड़ा issue है कि हमारा सारा जो production sector है और investment sector है, that was badly affected because energy crisis की वजह से further investment भी नहीं हो रही थी, और secondly जो investment है भी सही या उस वक्त चल रही थी, producers के लिए production cost बहुत ज़्यादा है having these energy crisis. So these were the features of first 5 years. Then comes the next 5 years, 13 से लेके 18 तक. This time period have seen improvement in the condition of the country as compared to the first 5 years of this era. GDP growth जो कि बहुत lowest और bottom level पे चली गई थी first 5 years में, वो सबसे पहले improve हुई, due to which budget deficit जो है वो fall किया. In this time period budget deficit fall करने की reason ये भी है कि revenue collection में improvement आई है. Private sector confidence somehow regained or improved by improving the overall economic situation of the country, political stability, and then improving the terrorist activities in the country. Inflation जो है वो control में रही, inflation fall करना शुरू हो गई. टैक्स कलेक्शन आई ऑलरेडी कोटेड इंप्रूव हुआ. एक्सपोर्ट्स अनफॉर्चुनेटली फॉल हुई. एक्सपोर्ट्स के फॉल करने से और इंपोर्ट्स के राइज करने से हमारा जो करंट अकाउंट था या है दैट इज शोइंग क्रिटिकली डेफिशिएंट. देन करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट आई ऑलरेडी कोटेड. डेट बर्डन जो है वो एक बड़ा प्रॉब्लम है इस पूरे टाइम पीरियड का, 10 सालों का, पहले 5 साल में भी और जो प्रीवियस 5 years थे इसमें भी डेट बर्डन कॉन्टिन्यूसली राइजेस ऑन द कंट्री. बिसाइड्स दिस, let's discuss some policy success of these 10 years. Tax collection is improved in this time period. The energy crisis, which was very much high in the first 5 years, that somehow handled by the government in the last 5 years. Although they have target to improve 33,000 megawatt, up to 33,000 megawatt in the energy sector, improving the capacity. They could not meet it, but to some extent energy crisis जो है वो problem resolve हुआ, due to which there is we can see improvement in the investment, improvement in the production. Inflation जो है वो control में रही. Overall अगर हम average inflation देखें तो वो 4% पे है. जो मेजर इकोनॉमिक इंसिडेंस है इस सारे टाइम पीरियड का, आई थिंक सभी स्टूडेंट्स ऑफ इकोनॉमिक्स दे आर वेल फेमिलियर विद इट, और इवन इकोनॉमिक्स के अलावा भी जनरली एवरीबडी नोज अबाउट सी पैक. सो सी पैक के जो प्रोजेक्ट्स हैं वो इस टाइम पीरियड में लॉन्च हुए, तो दैट इज द बिगेस्ट इकोनॉमिक इंसिडेंट ऑफ दिस इकोनॉमिक एरा विच विल हैव इट्स इम्पैक्ट्स इन द लेटर इकोनॉमिक एराज और अपकमिंग इकोनॉमिक ईयर्स ऑफ द कंट्री, बेसिकली अवेलेबल इन दिस टाइम पीरियड. CPEC के अंदर जो डिफरेंट प्रोजेक्ट्स लॉन्च हुए वो एवरीबडी इज वेल फेमिलियर. वील डिस्कस CPEC इन डिटेल बाय द एंड ऑफ दिस कोर्स. CPEC को बस बहुत ब्रीफली से डिस्कस यहाँ कर लेते हैं कि CPEC के अंदर यू ऑल वेल फेमिलियर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर प्रोजेक्ट्स भी हैं, एनर्जी के प्रोजेक्ट्स भी हैं. सो ऑल दीज प्रोजेक्ट्स विल हैव डेफिनेटली एम्प्लॉयमेंट एंड कैपिटल फॉर्मेशन इन द country. It will have positive impacts later on the country's economy. Then war on terror. That was another biggest change or biggest transformation in the country in this time period. जो कि पहले जो चंद साल हैं इस टाइम पीरियड के वो ये शो करते हैं कि मुल्क में टेररिस्ट एक्टिविटीज़ बहुत पीक पर थी, जिसकी वजह से इन्वेस्टर कॉन्फिडेंस भी रिड्यूस था. एंड पाकिस्तान का जो इमेज है वर्ल्ड वाइड दैट वाज वेरी पुअर सिक्योरिटी पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से और टेररिस्ट एक्टिविटीज़ के. 2013 में गवर्नमेंट के सिग्नल टू द आर्मी फॉर स्टार्टिंग ऑपरेशंस अगेंस्ट द टेररिस्ट इन द कंट्री. सो वी हैड स्टार्टेड वॉर ऑन टेरर विद द नेम ऑफ ज़रब एंड लेटर ऑन डिफरेंट अदर मिलिट्री ऑपरेशंस अगेंस्ट द टेररिस्ट. सो दैट ब्रिंग्स इंप्रूवमेंट इन द कंट्री on the scale of terrorism. So इसकी वजह से investor confidence भी improve हुआ and we had seen बहुत ज़्यादा बेहतरी in the tourist activities in the country. So overall a picture of Pakistan has improved after the control on the terrorist activities. So that is the policy success. Now finally पॉलिसी फेलियर्स. इन 10 सालों में अगर पॉलिसी फेलियर को क्रिटिकली एनालाइज करें तो सबसे पहले हम ये देखेंगे कि जो ओवरऑल इकोनॉमिक पॉलिसीज़ बनाई गई डोमेस्टिकली वो शॉर्ट टर्म बेसिस थी. अब शॉर्ट टर्म पॉलिसीज़ आपको इमीडिएट इम्पैक्ट तो पॉजिटिव देती हैं पर लेटर ऑन वो कंट्री के लिए उसकी जो कॉन्सिक्वेंसेज हैं वो हार्मफुल होते हैं. इकोनॉमिक कॉन्सिक्वेंसेज इसकी बड़ी एग्जांपल जो है एक्सटर्नल डेट है. वी केप्ट ऑन टेकिंग फॉरेन डेट एंड दैट बिकम्स अ डेट बर्डन एंड डेट सर्विसिंग विल बिकम अ प्रॉब्लम फॉर द अपकमिंग गवर्नमेंट्स. सो दैट इज बेसिकली पॉलिसी फेलियर. Then comes circular debt issue. Circular debt was 120 billion in 2010, 120 billion rupees, and now it is rupees 922 billion. So biggest increase in the circular debt. And circular debt का इतना ज़्यादा बढ़ जाना ultimately will bring effect to the energy supply in the country, and that will become a problem. Then strategic trade policy framework was launched in 2013 for the improvement of the exports, but unfortunately इसके भी targets achieve नहीं हुए. Rather we have seen poor performance in export growth और हमारी exports decline हुई और imports increase हुई, and we have seen current account deficit in this time period. So अगर हम इसको sum up करें 7th era और 10 years को with having set these different indicators of variations, so that shows a mixed trend. Initially जो है economic performance बहुत weak थी, बहुत पुअर थी, और अभी पिछले जो 5 साल हैं वो इकोनॉमिक परफॉर्मेंस बेहतर आई है. बहुत सारे इंडिकेटर्स बहुत पॉजिटिव और ऑप्टिमिस्टिक पिक्चर इकोनॉमी की शो कर रहे हैं. ऑल्दो वी हैव सीन सम पॉलिसी फेलियर्स, क्रिटिकल पॉलिसी फेलियर्स और अलार्मिंग सिचुएशन डिफरेंट सेक्टर्स एज पर द इकोनॉमिक इंडिकेटर्स लाइक फॉरेन डेट और सर्कुलर डेट. बट ओवरऑल दीज 10 years showed मिक्स पिक्चर और मिक्स काइंड ऑफ इकोनॉमिक परफॉर्मेंस इन द कंट्री. सो बाय दिस वी हैव कंप्लीटेड 7th इकोनॉमिक एरा. अभी तक हमने 7 डिफरेंट एराज डिस्कस कर लिए हैं, और एज इन द फर्स्ट वीडियो आई कोटेड कि हम पाकिस्तान की 70 साल की कहानी को डिस्कस करेंगे. कि शुरू में मैंने आपको बताया था कि हम पाकिस्तान की 70 साल की कहानी को डिस्कस करेंगे. तो आज वो 70 साल की कहानी, इकोनॉमी की 70 साल की कहानी ख़त्म हो गई है. हमने इसको 7 डिफरेंट वीडियोज़ में और 7 डिफरेंट एराज के परस्पेक्टिव में डिस्कस किया है. हर इकोनॉमिक एरा के कुछ जो है वो डाइवर्सिफाइड फीचर्स हैं, एंड वी हैड सीन ग्रेजुअली दैट हाउ इकोनॉमी हैज़ गॉन थ्रू दिस ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन प्रोसेस. सो बाय दिस 7 एराज हैव बीन कंप्लीटेड. अभी हम एक छोटी सी वीडियो इसके बाद ज़रूर रिकॉर्ड करेंगे जिसमें हम इस 70 years ऑफ पाकिस्तान इकोनॉमी की समरी को ब्रीफली डिस्कस कर लेंगे, और यू कुड से वील हैव अ कंक्लूजन, एंड बाय दैट we'll be completing our first module. I would suggest that you keep on learning, you keep on watching the videos, and beside this keep on reading the recommended books and helping material for having the better understanding and retention of the course. See you in the next video. Finally, we have reached to the last video of the first module, structural transformation. So far, we have discussed 70 years of Pakistan economy in detail. We have discussed these 70 years in 7 different economic eras and different videos discussing in detail the economic incidents or diversified features of the economy. So, आज की video is the last video in which we'll be briefly discussing or we'll have a quick analysis of these 70 years of development in Pakistan's economy. First of all, we'll divide or discuss the overall Pakistan's economy having different type of regimes. One is a military regime and second is a democratic regime. So, if we look in detail, in 70 सालों में 32 years are of the military government Pakistan having 3 different time periods, and 38 years are of the democratic government having 4 different time periods. So democracy prevails, or democracy as compared to the military government has more time in Pakistan's economy. And then comes the overall growth rate since independence. That remains around 5%, which sounds very reasonable and commendable for any developing economy, although its trend is falling since 1988. But having this reasonable growth rate, average growth rate, Pakistan is still considered 39th poorest nation among 203 nations quoted by the World Bank. That is questionable. Then second important fact about the Pakistan's economy in these 70 years is Pakistan remains highly dependent on aid and foreign assistance. So that is the reason, even after 7 decades of political independence, foreign countries and multinational institutions play a very dominant role in economic and political affairs of the country. That needs to be taken seriously. Then comes type of development. Pakistan is having capitalistic type of development, although in the initial time period, in the beginning, state and the government played a very important role in the capital formation, in industrial development, but later on the private sector is responsible for growth and development in the capital formation industry. So then if you look at the overall GDP growth rate in this time period, I have a quick review. Sometimes it's very high and sometimes it shows very lowest trend. So it remains very volatile. One can analyze and quickly quote that Pakistan's growth rate remains volatile. It was not long lasting and consistent. If it was consistent growth rate, our country might would have a better position, economic position in the region. Then comes to the other indicators, like Pakistan is still lowest performer in South Asian region on Human Development Index, especially in education indicator, and Pakistan is still lowest female labor force participation rate in this region. Then next is tax to GDP ratio, which is 12.4%. It's still one of the lowest in the world. Then comes corruption. Pakistan was considered second most corrupt country after Nigeria in 1996-97. Although this position has improved a lot in 2018, but still we have an awkward position. Pakistan's score is 32 out of 100 in corruption perception index by the Transparency International. So Pakistan at the time of independence was bestowed with immense natural resources and skilled labor, human resources. So Pakistan was blessed with these resources. Having these resources, Pakistan could have grown much more, having a reasonable growth rate as well. But हमने detail में देखा कि Pakistan has seen the bottlenecks and different kind of economic issues in different sectors. That might be the reason we still lag behind other nations of the world, or especially nations of the region. Although 7 decades is a fairly long time for an economy to transform, to change, to develop. But unfortunately, Pakistan is lag behind other nations of the world, or especially of the region, having same story of development and growth. So we'll be discussing in detail the issues related to Pakistan economy and different sectors in the next module or next modules. The first module is over today. We have discussed in detail the 70 years of Pakistan economy, and I tried to make a strong foundation by discussing economic history of the country in detail. I hope and expect you have learned a lot with these videos, and you will be studying from the recommended book and the helping material. I would suggest you to have a proper understanding or comprehensive learning, and you can have questions to me if you come across any problem regarding the content which I have delivered. By this, the module 1 is completed. Good luck for the module 1. और हम next module जो है वो agriculture से related है, वो हम next video में start करेंगे discuss करना. And for today, good luck and have a good day. See you in the next video.